All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to HTD's Agile Leaders podcast, where we unpack how the best tech and product leaders drive transformation faster. I'm your host, Evan Shai. Today, I'm joined by my dear friend, Tim Alvis, a world-class product and technology leader who has led teams at Amazon, Microsoft, and Spins, where he helped scale the business to $1 billion exit. Let's dive in. Tim, thanks so much for being with us today, my man.
It's always a pleasure, really.
What I think would be a great starting point is just kind of get the audience caught up with, what you're doing now, the work that you're really focused on today, and then we can double click on some of the things that you've learned and best practices you've implemented.
Yeah, I think it's hard to give context for what I'm doing without sounding a little bit like a crackpot, but I'm going to take a risk anyway. I'm fairly convinced, as are evidently trillions of dollars worth of investor minds, that the majority of the economic production on the planet is going to be running through AI at some point in the future that's nearer rather than further away. And that means there's this really interesting opportunity right now where AI is heavily subsidized, which means you can build a valuable company using AI for far less than it actually costs to do this based on compute. But also that if you don't do it right now, there's a future coming where you probably won't necessarily have the opportunity. One of the things that I was looking at, and you remember some experiments with like a different form of building like a product leadership platform based off of everything that I felt I had learned in the PE world and like how PE firms need to manage large portfolios and how like mid-size and larger size companies need to manage complex product problems. The change that's happened is now when you look at how to address those things, really actually the fundamental problem isn't that work. It's not building the roadmap. It's not doing those things. The fundamental problem is actually how do you prevent your company from becoming obsolete really quickly? And one of the ways to do that is to actually leverage AI to move fast. So I'll give an example of something that we actually built in the platform. It's called Scala. And Scala right now, I joined a company called Everway. And after like the first 4 months, still with a product management team of like, 15, 16 product managers, built out a user research team, still getting a bunch of really well-defined personas and jobs to be done and the problems that they had, like all the really important sort of fundamental work to understand a 37 product portfolio, which is what I had at the time. It was tough. Months in, it still wasn't done. There wasn't consistency between how they were handling the personas. There wasn't consistency for how they were handling jobs. We had duplicated problems all over the place, the problem ranking. Like it was actually also tough to train because when you look at how these companies grow, they tend to hire domain experts. And so they grow organically quickly. Long story short, what was taking months and didn't get done successfully, now when I'm having a conversation showing someone, I press a button, we talk for 2 or 3 minutes about how it can work, and then it's done. And it's done. Like it's not done at an okay level. It spins up a series of agents that have been trained to do that particular job and do it extremely well that feed one another. So the first one goes off, for example, and understands the persona. Then it hands the persona understanding off to an agent that specializes in jobs to be done, which then gets handed off to one that specializes in how to research and identify the problems that people have. And it researches all of this and produces all of the backup research, and it stores it in a deterministic layer, which means no hallucination because it's not allowed to know anything that's not in this layer of actual like a knowledge graph that sits underneath. So when you look at like what I'm up to right now, it's really, this is a narrow window, I think, of opportunity. I think every company needs to take advantage of it in their own way. And one of the ways to free up resources to go build the things they should be building with AI is to have AI actually accelerate what they do as a business. So the fact that I can do about 3 minutes worth of work and get months worth of production out, it just requires far fewer product management resources now to get the same amount of work done. It can write requirements, product marketing, does the persona research, all of it.
Incredible. Was there a set of tools that you were trying to use or kind of
Oh
duct
yeah.
tape together to make it happen and just
I
wasn't
went
working?
all over the board. So my first experiments were with Replit, and Replit allows you to move really fast. But the problem with Replit is you can't fine tune really well. And you don't get to really pick the model that's doing the work. And it turns out that the programming models, they tend to be better at some tasks than others. So Opus 4.1 is really good at blank slate engineering architecture. Sonnet's better for debugging. And you've got like weird little things to where you know, like, I'm dealing with data models. I need to switch over to this. So I switched to Cursor, which allows me to actually flip between programming models. So it's like picking developers. It's like, I need this. But the amazing thing is, once you get pretty familiar with how to bounce back and forth, and if you're willing to do a little bit of research to stay up on the changes, because they do change as different releases come out, and you've got like GTP5 codecs now. Yeah, so it's a collection of different programming models to go build it, but it's all real. Like it's sitting on Node.js, it's sitting on Postgres. Like there's no like fake layer. This just publishes to AWS's ecosystem using AWS like build scripts that it generated itself. So I built the entire platform with zero designers, zero programmers, no infrastructure specialists. It has everything I want. It has Google authentication, all of it.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. And did you start using it at your prior company?
I did start using the tools there because it became readily apparent. The example, I won't name the products, but we had one product that was struggling in one market. And this
Okay.
product had a little dedicated engineering team. They were moving rather slow, and competitors seemed to be moving a little bit quicker. And one of our folks got the idea that what if they tried to like build this one small app again? How long would it take them? And they thought maybe it would take them a couple weeks. And instead, they got it done in an afternoon. So they replaced everything that these three people had been doing for about a year and a half in an afternoon of using this tool. And it just functioned. It functioned well enough to go out and sell and pitch and keep customers. And that's when I'm like, okay, like clearly what I've been hearing from engineers, it's very difficult to have someone whose job depends on a thing not working tell you that it works. And so if you're asking only engineers if the engineering is actually decent, you're probably not going to get as accurate an answer as you can. So instead, what I started talking to are not the engineers that are afraid of the AI, but the engineers who are leveraging it to be like 100 times better than they were. Because it's not that like all engineers are going to go away instantly. It's much more that now you have an engineer, he can produce 100 times the amount of code. Like I can build an entire product by myself in half a week compared to like an entire engineering team. So now I've got time to build two products. I can build three products. Like I can build multiple things. And I think an engineer who's focused on nothing but the coding side, they can be ultra productive. So it definitely started with an experiment there, but it quickly became, I realized that there is no longer a build barrier
Yeah.
to like launching product or a company. The build barrier is gone.
Yeah, no question about it. A couple things in there. I guess one, given that firsthand experience, do you anticipate the kind of anatomy or architecture of an organization, I guess particularly a product and technology organization, is going to change? Is the talent pyramid going to kind of flip upside down where you just don't need as much, junior talent necessarily, and the kind of focuses on higher leverage mid to senior level talent, or how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, I think the middle is what's going to get eaten first. Because what I think is
Okay.
interesting, the high level, like for example, Scala, like let's take its mission. I don't think the product organizations disappear entirely with Scala. But I do
Yeah.
think it's just to being like, let's say, one of me and plus maybe two key people to actually make strategic decisions with it in parallel. And then a whole bunch of the middle gone. And then you'll have junior folks who are coming in and basically acting like, at least for a little while until we become so
Yeah.
confident that it works that, you don't need it. But for a while, like the juniors, and the great thing about the juniors in that position is if you pair a junior with an AI that is an expert at the thing it does, you basically have an expert in training. They have a mentor available 24/7. So the speed at which they go from junior to expert is going to be extremely fast. The other thing
At
I
a
think is
fraction of the cost. Yeah.
at a fraction.
Yeah.
And I also think that
Yeah.
it's going to change how we prioritize who we hire. Right now, we hire so much off of the expertise of like the specific thing that they're doing. Once you pair someone with an AI that is better than any human's going to be at it at scale and speed, now you're hiring for human factors. Are they good at working with people? Do they understand how to communicate effectively and efficiently? Are they pleasant to work with? Do they show up? Are they reliable? Like these things that are still important and probably should be more important now will become the most important thing because the expertise is not going to be it's not going to be a point of friction.
Totally. Totally makes sense. I've definitely spent a decent amount of time just like thinking about either in new startups or even within mature organizations, exactly the point that you made, just how much the barrier to launching new ideas, new products, new application has just collapsed, right? But, really building a scalable, finding product market fit and building kind of a really robust product offering or even product suite around that still has a lot of the kind of complexities and challenges that come with that process, although maybe it looks a little different than it once did. Has Have these tools and the speed with which you can go from idea to deploying new ideas in the wild, has that changed how you think about best practices of leading a product team? So agile methodology, etc.
1,000%, to the
Yeah.
point where there used to be, like, I really used to feel like your best way to go about something was to very quickly get to, okay, for this particular persona, like, here are the problem that's valuable. We know that they spend a lot of time and money trying to solve it. We can solve it with software. Let's go figure out the smallest thing you can build that solves that. But before we go build it, let's do some Figma designs and mockups and get on whatever it might be. That second part of that question is gone. What you should actually do is go from that understanding and just build the thing. In fact, I was on a discovery call this week where, while I was talking to the person, I was just building it in the background so that by the end of the 35-minute call, it was like, how does this look as a start? Like, it's ridiculous because it's not, with the problem with the Figma prototypes is it doesn't actually save the data. They don't get to actually experience the workflow. They get this like movie of the workflow. It's like a click by, point adventure or whatever, choose your own path adventure, where this is the actual thing that's kind of functioning. It's saving stuff to a database. So I think that completely changes how we think about both the approach to getting out and getting validation in front of customers, and two, the concept of an MVP. The reason MVPs needed to be extremely small was because building is very time consuming and expensive. Now, the reason to make it as small as possible is just to focus your learning on a tight, small thing. But if it turns out and this happens, there are some products that are just as complex as they need to be. There isn't a way to remove the third piece or the fourth piece. And that meant they were really bad ideas for startups typically because you had a moonshot. You might not know if you
Yeah.
built the right thing for 2 years. Now you might not know if you built the right thing for a week. I can handle that kind of risk, like even if it's multiple, layers of complexity. So I think the concept of MVP has changed, and the speed at which you need to get in front of customers has really accelerated. And I would say, honestly, and this is more of the like the crackpot end, but if I were advising somebody today, I would not try to hold on to a company for 4 or 5 years, because the
Yeah.
chances that you're going to wake up and find that OpenAI or Anthropic or one of these companies has just recreated your entire company overnight, it's just too high. So my
Yeah.
advice would be plan for an earlier exit than you might have, which also means, they say that triple double double is dead. It absolutely is dead because you don't have time to wait for triple double double.
Yeah. 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 I love that. The when you so in terms of kind of speed to market, getting in front of customers fast, if you're managing a larger team like you have several times in your career, even just more recently, would you, like, how much will you kind of unshackle everyone to just get products in front of customers? Like, how wide does that experimentation go, or are there still kind of gatekeeping that needs to happen to ensure that you're testing the right things and have some focus?
I think it makes the fundamentals of understanding, like, what I would do before I would ever let somebody just go vibe code or whatever you want to call it and produce something in
Hmm.
front of a customer. I would want to see that they really, really, you remember kind of the mantra, it's only become stronger. Like, solutions don't matter, problems matter. Like, solutions, you're going
Yeah.
to find 15 different ways potentially to solve this thing. It doesn't matter if you land on the best one. You have to land on a good one, but not the best one. What does matter though is you pick the right problem to solve. So what I would say is, like, the fundamentals that would slow it down, the gate that I would want them to go through, show me you understand and I've identified a problem that is valuable enough that it is likely that someone is going to exchange hard-earned money to solve it. Not because everything needs to be about money, but certainly businesses do. Like, ultimately, like, businesses operate off of income, right? So, like, show me you have found a problem that is valuable enough that someone will write you a check for it. Once I've seen that, then yeah, go to town, spend a week building something, getting in front of customers.
I love it. Does Scala help the kind of problem identification and validation phase, or is that a different part of the workflow?
Yeah, and a different kind of call, I'd pop it up and show you. So right now, I just actually finished demonstrating. So I told it, by the way, the great thing about it now too, you don't even have to type anything. So it made it easy. I didn't have to grab my, but just click the microphone button, said, hey, let's create a persona for a chief marketing officer. Went down and it started off the research. It spun up an agent to understand what I meant by chief product marketing officer in the context of this product. And then it launched a whole bunch of agents. And one of them took the jobs to be done that it identified. And by the way, it actually builds the flow of the entire job. So it literally knows task by task, like you do this, then you do this, then you do this, and what KPIs you're measuring at each point in those tasks. And then it hands it to an agent that's responsible for identifying problems, and it scores it. So it actually goes off and scores the acuteness of the problem. So like how sharply is it felt? And there's a very well defined scale. The frequency, so is it daily, weekly, monthly, or it doesn't matter. The consistency, if you took 100 of these personas in a room and asked them all about the problem, how many of them would describe it the same way? And the durability, like how likely is this problem to persist? And it scores every problem it finds against every one of those jobs to be done based on that scoring to help you prioritize out of the gate.
Wow. What data is it using to, like to actually get the kind of market sentiment, if you will? Like, how is it getting that feedback from, would-be customers?
Yeah, so a lot of it depends on the persona you give it. So it's got a lot of freedom. So there's no like defined set of paths, but the
Okay.
reason role analysis starts first is one of the elements of the role analysis is where the hell do you go to find this information? Are they talking on trade forums? Are they talking on Reddit? Do they happen to show up and they have like this particular publication, this magazine that's like so when it goes off and find the references, I'm often amused at the things that it found that I had no idea could actually get access to. Like I didn't know that people have been archiving Facebook groups and exporting it to different things. Like so it finds it everywhere. But its job is to come back with these answers to the best of its ability, which, again, if somebody can gather 100 people together, which by the way, this is always a future stage of being able to do this on its own as well. But unless it's something where there just isn't anyone talking about it online, it tends to actually find information. Here's what was amazing. We had paid, I won't use the full name, I'll use the initials. There was a research firm with the initials OW, and there was a seven-figure research deck that was produced for something that I've seen that I had as a reference point. And I was able to point the AI at the same topics and get something that not only had the same level of content, but even the calculations that it had done in like market size and budgets available using a bottoms down. So I also use debate by or consensus by debate. So I don't spin up one agent to go do the job and then come back and say, here's what I think. You spin up five and they argue and then come to a consensus. Even the numbers were within a relatively safe range. And that was like seven figures worth of research that it did in about 10 minutes. So there are lots of ways to go at this. And even if it's not perfect, the acceleration of getting 80% of the way there in 10
Yeah.
minutes, not months and not seven figures, like every company will have access to click a button and get that level of research, like while they're eating a snack.
How maybe it's too early for this part, but how are you thinking about the kind of commercial structure of this? I mean, this sounds like the most valuable tool that any product and technology leader could ultimately be leveraging. Where are you at in the journey of making this available to other people?
Yeah, right now I'm just testing it with a few companies that I have. Like the best thing about doing this right now is I'm testing its outputs against known answers. So I'm not
Okay.
wondering if the stuff it's coming back with is accurate or inaccurate. I know. So if like an AI goes off the rails, I'm like, okay, you need to be retrained off of this or do this differently. Um, so when it comes to the testing part, it's companies with products where I know them extremely well. So those are
Okay.
the current insiders. I will open it to new like very soon. Actually, this calendar year, if not this month. It'll be companies for which I have no knowledge at all. In
Okay.
terms of the commercialization, I honestly I haven't settled on something. I can tell you that my thought process around what is possible, like what is likely for this, is given that at a company I know it would have probably prevented us from having to hire 12 to 14 people. The value of what it would be worth to bring it into it, not to mention it displaces about 50,000 a year in SaaS contracts for that company. The
Sure.
value is
Sure.
pretty high, like on a per company basis. But I don't want the value to be like a major barrier. I would much rather have 100,000 companies using it and us do, in Scala doing well than pricing it such that like only, 1,000 companies can. So trying to figure that out still. I can say it will have a token component right now because there's too much variability in the cost of AI, and depending on what you trigger, like the cost for Scala could go much up or down. But the subscriptions come with a pretty generous allocation in tokens. Like for example, the standard level that I had set aside, like for the starter package, I've been using that as a test for the last 3 weeks, and I'm still have credits. So.
Wow. Wow. Well, I certainly want us at HTD and Coding Temple to be able to leverage this tool as soon as it's available. Um, Hopefully in the next wave. The value is very clear, and of course, you and I have had the opportunity of talking about some of this before, and it's always been something that I think is very clearly needed in the market, and your perspective and capability of executing against it is unique and world class, I would say. So I'm excited to be able to try it out firsthand, and hopefully you can even show me a demo here in the
Yeah,
next couple weeks.
yeah, for sure, absolutely. One of the things I'm looking at right now is I'm actually going to start to work on leveraging the Perplexity API just to get a
Okay.
feel for what happens when you plug in a slightly different type of AI agent. And the other next step is going to be building in the ability. Not only will it be able to write the requirements documents, but I'm building the agent to actually have it be able to use Cursor on its own.
Oh wow. Wow.
So
Wow.
even if you are not feeling comfortable with jumping into Cursor, it will write the prompts for Cursor to build the thing that you're describing in Scala.
Incredible. Incredible. Um, with a lot of these tools and changes, I think it's natural for a lot of people to feel vulnerable in terms of what their job, whether there is a job for them or what their job ultimately looks like. Um, you know, have you had to navigate in your last role when you had larger team? Had you had to kind of navigate how to keep teams motivated and productive as these kind of narratives are constantly on the headlines, and people are concerned about headcount and how their jobs ultimately evolve?
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a societal level problem over the next 10
Yeah,
years.
totally.
I think if again, if you're of the conviction, and I'm not alone because obviously much smarter and more well resourced people than I have been putting trillions of dollars into these companies for a reason. But if you really do believe that a vast majority of the economic productivity of the planet is going to go through a small number of AI companies, then you're looking at 30, 40, 50% unemployment in a relatively short period of time. So I think there's going to be a societal challenge to address some of this because no single company can address it for its employees. Does that make sense? Like it's going to be universal. It's not like if you are laid off because of AI at one company, you're going to go find the same thing at another. Like the job's gone, right? Like it's just everybody's going to sort of cascade, and the transition won't be on the time scale of the cloud. It'll be at a pace 5 times faster than the cloud transition in terms of tech. So I think as a leader inside of a company, the best thing you can do is to help the people who are in roles that can leverage AI figure out how to become 100 times more productive because from growing a business, there are two ways to handle things. You can grow revenue or you can cut costs. But if you can grow revenue far faster than you grow costs, you actually don't need to cut. Right. So one of the ways to go about it is what if you can help your company grow so much faster that it's not thinking about how do I displace? It's just thinking about how do I get 100 more views. So one of the things that I really leaned into in the prior role is, yeah, there's some scariness here because obviously if AI can do this thing, we don't need 30 people to do that. But what if we could just be 30 times more productive? And then we actually do. So it was trying to help
Yeah.
find that way of like become an AI expert in the
Yep.
area where you sit and then leverage the experience you have because AI is still not, it's not self-guided yet. And it won't be for years. And there are too many areas for it to be self-guided everywhere. And people won't trust it for a while. Even if it's capable, they won't trust it. Like right now, it's far more capable in engineering than we give credit for because the trust factor is low. Trust will catch
Couldn't agree
up.
more. Yeah.
I would say
I
training
could.
is.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. There's a real opportunity for it to be an amplifier, but in order for it to be a real amplifier, and you have to lean in, and you have to be experimenting with these different tools, and organizations and leaders of those organizations need to ensure that not only are people able to experiment with different tools, but really that there's kind of a cultural drive to push the boundaries of experimentation and support different ways of leveraging this technology. I think that's going to be required.
And I know there's a lot of backlash. Like you see it on LinkedIn where there'll be a CEO that's like, we're all in on AI. We're going to be doing something. And like 80 people pile on and they're like, oh, AI, everything. It's AI slop. It's generated. It's still like,
Yeah,
one, regardless of whether that debate comes out on one side or the other, it's done. Like there are some things you can't put back in the box. It's here. Like you can argue that it was unethically built, and there's actually some good arguments for that on a lot of the background stuff. But it's too late. Like it's now out of the box. It's not going to get unbuilt, and they're not going to shut it down because it's too valuable overall for everyone. So rather than fighting about whether it should exist, people really need to understand that it exists. It is getting better at a pace that is exponential, not slowing down, and eventually you're going to hit a point where AI is building AI, and
yeah,
then you know you're watching things you might not even understand start to take place.
yeah. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Tim, as always, man, super valuable. I could probably ask you 30 more questions, but want to be respectful of your time. Is there any takeaways that you'd want to share with the audience? Things to keep in mind as they're thinking about either their product roadmaps or how they're thinking about their teams or just AI generally. Yeah, anything you want to leave with the audience?
I would say, and not to make it overly personal, but one of the reasons for the friendship that we've had, despite often having to go long periods of time working, um, regardless of how your individual business or career, whatever plays out relative to AI or anything else, what's certain is that if this does happen, like this human level of being like a good person, higher integrity, all of that stuff, it's going to matter more than ever. So one of the things I hear you iterated all the time, but just do what you say you'll do. Like really, if you say you'll do something, just do it. Be reliable, because if you're reliable and you are open and are learning and are driving stuff, like you'll be fine. Like you really will be fine. So that's it.
Amen. Amen. I'm a preacher of that for sure. Tim, thank you so much. I encourage everyone to keep an eye out for Tim Alvis on LinkedIn. Stay abreast of the developments with Scala as well. It sounds like a tool that all of us can benefit from. Thanks so much, Tim.
Evan, thank you, sir. We'll see you.